Mr. RAPHAEL HONIGSTEIN, Sky Germany Premier League correspondent and budding agent. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always great to see you. Now, but today I'd like to hone in on Benjamin Šeško because you've been informing us about him for a number of years now, going back to his days in Salzburg. What was the general consensus of his character right back when you first started covering him?
I wouldn't go as far as saying that I could tell you what the general consensus was, but speaking to one or two people from the club, the coaches, the assistant coach, Juzunovic, he went on the record for an article I did in The Athletic. He said, Benji's got absolutely everything, apart from maybe that kind of absolute hunger to score goals. So he felt you need to almost kind of push him a little bit. Doesn't perhaps quite know how good he is, and also drum a bit more selfishness into him because he's so technical and loves to pass and loves to help others that sometimes he felt at the time at least that his sort of goal scoring instincts, this kind of mad drive that all the big goal scorers have, like they will sort of put their life on the line to score a scrappy winner in the 65th minute. That kind of do or die attitude was perhaps something that he could still develop. But he was very young, of course, at that time. And it is my pet theory, which I sort of line up every time somebody asks me, that I think centre forwards tend to just peak a little bit later. I think they tend to really come into their own in the second half of their 20s rather than their earlier half. So I think in that respect, he's still got there's a lot of room still for development and for getting better.
Okay. I mean, obviously you've seen United's issues, should we say, up front and not having a number 9 in there with that sort of predatory instinct. It's been nice to see the 2 goals that he has scored have been those sort of scrappy, almost instinctive type finishes. So that does augur well that he's maybe on the right path, would you say?
I think certainly he's on the right path. I think the team is beginning to click a little bit up front. I think as the confidence collectively grows, his confidence will pick up as well. And I think they are appreciating already the runs, the work rate. But patience is an order. I think Højlund, perhaps his ceiling is lower, but he seems to be further developed, I think, in terms of his all-round game. And you can see that in the goals he's scoring in Italy at the moment, but the patience wasn't quite there with him. And of course, when you lead the line for Man United, the comparisons are inevitable with the good and the greats who were there before you. And I think that is a tall order for somebody who is still growing, still developing at this level. So I'm hoping for him that this wasn't premature and that he's actually given a bit of time and given a bit of space to develop and to improve. Because if not, I can see how maybe playing at a slightly less sort of pressurized environment might work for him for the next year or so, and then he'll probably be a much better player at 25, 26. So it's going to be really interesting for me to see if United allow him that space and that time, or if they do what they did with Højlund and perhaps look for another sort of more ready-made, or at least on paper, more ready-made solution next summer.
On his personal development level, then could that maybe play into his hands, and I suppose United's hands in the long term, that we've only got 1 game a week, so there's time to really kind of hammer home the education side of things and let him rest and recuperate and ensure that he's going into every game as armed and as fresh as he can be.
I think in theory it should work for every player and of course the manager to have more time to control the actual coaching, to actually work on the details. It's not just traveling and recovery and traveling. So I think he and everyone else is going to benefit. At the same time, of course, having more games makes it easier to rotate, gives more game time to perhaps players who are not for whatever reason flying, and then they can score lots of goals away to Bratislava and find some rhythm that way. No disrespect to Bratislava, of course, who were wonderful in the Champions League last year. But you know what I mean. I
Yeah.
think it for centre forwards who are perhaps not quite at the top level of their game, facing slightly more amenable opposition in Europe might not be the worst thing. But I think on balance, certainly as a coach, I think you would prefer having that time to really work on the mechanisms, work on the processes. You run here, this guy runs there. It's not patterns, it's more about if something happens, then another thing needs to happen. And these kind of um, what's the best word for it? Sort of interdependent decision making processes up front. I think these are the things that will improve markedly at United as the season progresses.
I do think that as it has progressed so far, I think he came in maybe looking at a little bit sort of wide-eyed and new to his surroundings as he was, but he's making more and more contributions now. I think, like you said, like as you rightly say, the team is clicking. They know they're recognizing the runs. There's more chemistry building with the other forwards, but he's making the contributions as well, isn't he? He didn't get a goal or an assist for it, but the flick on against Chelsea for Mbeumo, which got the Sanchez red card, that was a key act in the game. Goals against Brentford and Sunderland, and then first assist at the weekend with Mbeumo against Brighton. I think he's setting a decent, manageable, but still decent pace, isn't he?
Yeah, I agree. And I think the fact that he doesn't stop moving and makes a lot of runs, even if they come to nothing, I think that already adds a lot to the team. I think if we compare him to Haaland, Haaland looked a little bit static at times last season, whenever I saw United. And Šeško has a more natural ability to drop deep, to get involved in a link-up play, or to play on the shoulder of the last man and push them back simply by occupying that space and being a threat on the through ball. So I think his sort of characteristics as a striker fit very well into the system. It's now a question of can he find confidence? Can he improve as much as the team around him seem to be? And will they kind of settle on him? Or will there always be sort of a question whether he is really the real deal and do we have to move on and so on? And I think he might be slightly more sensitive than your average sort of centre forward. And I think it's important for him to feel the kind of backing and to feel the confidence from his teammates. But at the same time, of course, that can only really be won through performances. So it's a little bit catch-22 situation. Um, I think there's enough reason to believe that it's going to go really well eventually. But yeah, I think it needs time. United still need time. He still needs time. But he's got an incredibly high ceiling, and I'd love him to succeed.
You spoke quite rightly about the pressurized environment of United these days, and as well, I think the football culture is quicker than ever to pass a verdict, isn't it? I mean, we saw an article probably a couple of weeks back now where agents were, or I think it's 20 agents were surveyed, and 5 out of the 20 picked him as probably the worst signing of the summer. That kind of thing, it doesn't help, but whenever there's an action, you want to see the reaction, and that was quickly followed by him being benched at Anfield. But when he came off the bench, he could have been embarrassed by not starting such a massive game. He could have been carrying, the negative feedback if it had reached him. But he played really well. He played really, really well, and then he's done the exact same against Brighton as well. It kind of augurs well, doesn't it?
I think so. I don't think he'd be too concerned, but by the verdict of 5 agents, who are all not his agent, of course, and perhaps would have liked to sell their player to United instead.
Yeah.
Um, so I would take that with a bucket of salt, not just a pinch. And I'd be very surprised if he takes much notice of that. It'll be much more important what Amorim says to him, how he handles him, how he explains things to him. Why is it that he's not starting this particular game? What is his role from the bench? I think if he feels that there's communication and there's honesty and decency in the way he's being treated, then I think he is still young enough to understand that he's not going to be an automatic starter in every single game, and that he's not yet fully established in that position to lay any claims on an automatic starting berth. So yeah, I think that's something he would have known going into this, and sure, it doesn't trouble him that much.